Hare Krishna, everyone. Now we will recite the introductory prayers. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So today we will cover chapters 3, 4, and 5. Primarily chapter 3 of the Nectar Devotion. 4 and 5 are very short, so there's not so much to talk about. But very nice chapters, and you'll see the connection also. Different points are repeated in the Nectar Devotion in different ways. And so today what we will start with is very much similar to what we were talking about last time, but Srila Rupa Goswami is approaching it in a slightly different way. So without any further delay, I'll share my slides here. Can everyone see the slides?
Yes, Prabhu.
Wonderful, thank you. I know that there's New York Rath Yatra today, so in spite of that, thank you so many people for coming. Also, if you need to leave early for the Rath Yatra, that's more important. Feel free to leave, and the recording will be there. So I did start the recording. Yes, it's being recorded, and the recording I will make sure is available for devotees who are going to Rath Yatra. Of course, it's better that you're in person, so thank you for attending in person. So lesson 6, this is the independent nature of pure devotional service. So in these chapters, the general theme is that Rupa Goswami is trying to show that pure devotional service or devotional service to Krishna is independent of all other things. Something that we see is very, very in tune with Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission. Srila Prabhupada made it very clear that bhakti is independent of what? Of race, of gender, of caste, of creed, of location, of intellectual capability. In all of these ways, bhakti is independent of how smart you are, Bhakti is independent of how strong you are. Bhakti is independent of these things because it's beyond these things. So a quick revision to see the connection. Last time we talked about the following things. We defined and explained the process of sadhana bhakti. So what is the process of sadhana bhakti? We defined and explained that. We explained the distinction between Vaidhi and Raganuga sadhana bhakti. How Vaidhi is devotional service and practice, Raganuga is spontaneous bhakti. And we discussed the qualification for practicing devotional service in relation to Prabhupada's mood and mission. So this last one, we discussed the qualification, what makes a person eligible to practice devotional service. And it's this point, this last point, that now Rupa Goswami further expands upon. Who remembers last time, what was the qualification for practicing devotional service?
Eligibility from a previous life.
Very nice. Yes. So one can practice bhakti in this life if one is bringing it from a previous life. Yes. What's another one? There's one more. Someone else can answer. You can.
Receiving the mercy of a pure devotee.
Yes, receiving the causeless mercy. So someone will say, well, it comes from a previous life, but what about the first life? How does it begin? And that is, it can begin in a certain lifetime by the causeless mercy of a pure devotee. So these were the two things that we had mentioned, and how there is almost a tension in Prabhupada's statements, that Prabhupada says that there's there's no cause for bhakti, there's no cause for devotional service, and at the same time he'll say yes, for devotional service you have to be practicing it in your last life. So how to resolve these statements? And this is why, because there's two possible sources of bhakti. Now above and beyond this, Rupa Goswami now points out, fine, it comes from a past life or it comes from a devotee, but what is it? What is it that the mercy of the devotee gives that makes a person eligible for accepting devotional service? What is it that we get from our previous life that makes us practice devotional service? And in order to give the answer, Rupa Goswami quotes a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is 1-14 of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Yadrichaya mat kathadao jata shraddhas tuya puman na nirvinno nati sakto bhakti yoga sya siddhidha. My dear Uddhava, only by exceptional fortune does someone become attracted to me. And even if one is not completely detached from fruitive activities or is not completely attached to devotional service, such service is quickly effective. So this is the verse here. It's a very deep verse and it's a very cryptic verse. So it's only due to exceptional fortune, right? Krishna is saying. So that is the mercy of the devotee, the good fortune, the causeless mercy, yadrichaya. But as a result of that causeless mercy, what is this verse saying? What happens to us? The result of this devotional
Get
service.
detached, Prabhu.
Yes.
We get detached from fruitive activities.
Yes, to some degree, but that's not what makes us eligible for devotional service. Because it's saying even if one is not completely detached from fruitive activities, what is the eligibility that makes a person eligible, that the mercy gives? Mercy gives us this, and that makes us eligible. If you read the verse carefully.
So we become attracted to Krishna.
Yes, the mercy gives us attraction. And the only qualification for bhakti is attraction to do bhakti. So we started by saying that this is about the purity of devotional service. So one does not need to be, for example, born in India to perform devotional service. Of course, right? That's not an eligibility, because there's so many people born in India and most of them are not attracted to devotional service. One does not have to be man or woman, all these things. But then what is the requirement to start bhakti? The only requirement, the only thing that makes a person eligible is the desire to do it. And the association of the devotee and the mercy of devotee is so wonderful, it's so powerful, that that's what it gives. It gives us the desire to do it. And why do we get the desire to do it when we associate with the devotee? That is the causeless mercy. That is the beauty of Krishna, that experience due to the association and mercy of the devotee, like Rath Yatra, makes people attracted to Krishna. So it is the attraction to the Lord service, that the devotional service, not even to the Lord, just his devotional service, that makes a person eligible. Now, where does this attraction come from? This is yadrichaya. And this yadrichaya is simply has to do with our willingness, our own free will, and the free will of a devotee. Because free will also plays a very important role, because so many people associated with Srila Prabhupada, with the pure devotee, they receive that association, they receive that causeless mercy, but still many of them did not take it up. And some of them took it up very seriously. So what was the difference? Srila Prabhupada was the same. There you could say degree of ignorance was the same. The only difference, the only thing that a person can point to is free will, yadrichaya. So to illustrate this free will, there's this beautiful verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Suto vacha evam sambhasya bhagavan narado vai savi sutam amantriya vinam ranayan yayau yadrichiko muni. Again, this word yadrichiko, this appears many times in the Bhagavatam. It's basically the word for free will. Suta Goswami said, thus addressing Vyasadeva, Srila Narad Muni took leave of him, and vibrating on his Veena instrument, he left to wander at his free will. And vibrating on his Veena instrument, he left to wander on his free will. So a very basic verse. Narad Muni is wandering at his free will. But then, Prabhupada, in the purport to this verse, he explains the deep meaning of this verse, which is 1.638. Every living being is anxious for full freedom, because that is his transcendental nature. And this freedom is obtained only through the transcendental service of the Lord. We can just imagine the extent and unlimitedness of his freedom, which is as good as that of the Supreme Lord. There is no reason or obligation for his traveling, and no one can stop him from his free movement. Similarly, the transcendental system of devotional service is also free. It may or may not develop in a particular person, even after he undergoes all the detailed formulas. So here we go. Similarly, the transcendental system of devotional service is also free. It may or may not develop in a particular person, even after he undergoes all the detailed formulas. Similarly, the association of the devotee is also free. One may be fortunate to have it, or one may not have it even after thousands of endeavors. Therefore, in all spheres of devotional service, freedom is the main pivot. Isn't this amazing what Prabhupada is saying? The transcendental system of devotional service is also free. One may get all the formulas, one may develop everything, but still one may not get it. Similarly, the association of the devotee is free, Even if one tries to get it, one may not get it. So freedom is the main pivot of devotional service. So what makes a person eligible to perform devotional service? Their free choice to do it, their desire to do it. It's just the attraction or the desire itself that makes a person. And the advanced devotee is someone who has a deep attraction to devotional service. The degree that we engage in devotional service is the degree of our attachment to the Lord, our attraction towards the Lord. Yakinapi atibhagyena jata shraddhosya sevane nati sakto na vairagya bhag asyam adhikarya so. Now, just a side point here that we have the Nectar of Devotion, which is the summary study of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So Srila Prabhupada gives us the summary in terms of, like an essay. And so he doesn't give us the verses. If you would like the actual verses, I actually just discovered this yesterday, so that's why I'm sharing it to you today. On Amazon.com, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is available, translated by Bhanu Swami, which also I knew, but it's available as a Kindle book, and I didn't know that. So you can just download it as a Kindle book, and you'll have it in moments. So if you actually want to read the verses, like, you read Srila Prabhupada's chapter, and you want to go back and read the verses that Srila Prabhupada is summarizing, it's very, very nectarian to do that. Furthermore, Bhanu Maharaj has given the commentaries of Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So just go on Amazon.com, type in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bhanu Swami, it'll come up. It's 2 volumes. We are only covering the first volume. So you can just download the first volume, which is the Kindle book, for $10, and you can get it. So this is the verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The person who has developed faith in serving the Lord by impressions arising from previous association with devotees, who is not too attached to material objects and who is not too detached, is qualified for Vaidhi Bhakti. I'll read this verse again. It's very key. We'll spend some time on this verse. So now Rupa Goswami goes to the next point. He says, the person who has developed faith in serving the Lord by impressions arising from previous association with devotees, which we talked about, who is not too attached to material objects and who is not too detached, is qualified for Vaidhi Bhakti. So this attraction, so it starts with attraction. That's what makes us eligible. The desire to do it is the eligibility for bhakti. That desire then and that attraction turns into faith. And then our degree of bhakti is dependent upon our degrees of faith, which we see in the Nectar of Instruction, and here in the Nectar of Devotion. We will in the following slides talk about it in detail, that the level of advancement of a devotee has to do with the level of faith that the devotee has. And that's why faith is not an easy thing. Faith is a great gift. Faith is something that is developed over time. Faith develops through experiences in bhakti. And those experiences in bhakti come as a result of performing bhakti. So faith is very important. Now, that faith develops in a person who is not too attached to material objects and who is not too detached as well. And such a person is eligible to perform Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So there's 3 things that are being mentioned here, or that are eligibility. One is the mercy of a devotee, right, is here. By impressions arising from previous association, that's what brings the faith. Not overly attached to material things, second. And the third is not overly detached. Now, the first 2 make sense to me. You need the mercy of the devotee, and one should not be overly attached. But the third one, not overly detached, does not seem to make sense. Isn't it good? I mean, maybe we don't have to be so overly detached, But isn't it good if we're detached from material life? Isn't that like what the Bhagavatam is teaching us? That this, body is a, bag of stool, urine, blood, pus. There's so many verses like this, inspiring detachment within us. So what is the meaning of this? Why is Rupa Goswami saying that the eligibility or in order to perform Vaidhi sadhana bhakti or bhakti to the Lord, one should not be overly detached?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
So is it that if you're so overly detached, or like, so that means, I guess you could develop that false ego that I'm so much detached, and, you are sort of leading on the path of impersonal, becoming, or emerging into impersonal Brahman. So maybe that's why we shouldn't be too much overly detached.
Yes, that's a very nice point. So it can lead to impersonalism. It can lead to pride. Very nice.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. There's also the thing where if you get over detached, that can lead to apathy. And in bhakti, you want to develop, love and compassion, and you can't do that necessarily if you start detaching yourself from everyone and everything.
Very nice point. Very beautiful point. That Prahlad Maharaj says that that I'm not interested in going to the forest like the yogis and jnanis. Rather, I want to stay in the cities and preach Krishna consciousness to liberate all these fools and rascals. Right. So if we become very detached from the world, very insensitive to it, then then we can actually act against the principles of bhakti. Very nice. Yes. So in the Waves of Devotion book, you'll see that Dhanudhar Swami does explain this a little bit. And he points out that bhakti requires the senses. It requires using the senses in the service of the Lord. It's a natural thing, right? You have to, dress the deities, let's say, in very beautiful ways, offer fragrant flowers. So if a person completely, cuts off their senses, rejects their senses, like the mystic yogis, then that person will have difficulty in performing devotional service. I must say that this third principle is really not relevant to us, for most of us, because our biggest problem is too much attachment, and we'd be more than happy to have gulab jamuns and pizza prasadam every single day. But the point being that there is a possibility of someone being overly detached. A very nice example of this, back to our previous example, is His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj's Journey Home book. That before coming to Srila Prabhupada, there was, Maharaj was, for example, having one carrot every day, one little carrot, one piece of carrot every single day. And on that diet, he was maintaining himself. But obviously on that diet, you cannot do active devotional service. I mean, he was sitting on a rock and meditating. More than that, he would collapse because the body does need food to live. And so after joining the process of bhakti, so to say, in his life story, he started to eat more, right? So when we say, oh well, that's less spiritual advancement, but no, here Rupa Goswami is saying that could be more spiritual advancement, that could be better, because then one is not overly detached. Now we don't have this problem. I'm just wanting to eat one carrot every day, so that's why this is not very relevant to us. But for the advanced souls, for the yogis, for the jnanis, for the very advanced personalities who are practicing bhakti, this or wanting or going on the path to bhakti, this may be an important point, a key point. Another way that we can understand this is We were reading about Narada Muni, right? This verse about Narada Muni. And if you look at his life story, how he came to Krishna consciousness, it's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam that he was the son of a maidservant, a very simple family of the Shudra caste. But it's described because he was so simple, and surrendered and was a Shudra, and his nature was offering menial service, that itself became a qualification for him to get the mercy of the devotees. Because he was a Shudra and his nature was just to offer service, he was able to serve the devotees very naturally. If he was a great jnani, yogi, just fasting, living in the forest, he would not have come in contact with the Bhakti Vedantas, with the Paramahansas, and he would not have been able to get their mercy. And his being a Shudra became an asset in his practice of devotional service. Yet a third example is that of the gopis. That the gopis, their very unique quality is that their senses are attracted by Krishna's beauty. They are particularly attracted by Krishna's fragrance, by his bodily luster, by his handsome frame. So if we deny the senses and become overly detached, we can actually inhibit the so to say sensual practice of bhakti, which is of course spiritually sensual, but it's also not impersonal, like Ambika Mataji has said. It can lead to impersonalism if we completely deny the senses. So these are the three things, very interesting things that Rupa Goswami mentions: not overly attached and not overly detached, and the mercy of the devotee. But we have to be careful. This not overly detached doesn't mean that we stay attached. Like, for example, the verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says that everything should be done in balance, right? We read this in the Gita, right? A yogi is someone who does not eat too much or eat too little. So Krishna in the Gita is also saying the same thing. A yogi is someone who does not sleep too much or sleep too little, but does everything in moderation, including, he says, recreation. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary, he explains to us what recreation is. Someone will say, a teenager may go to his parents and say, see, Krishna is saying that recreation should be done in moderation. So I should be part of sports, and I should be part of the football team. I should be part of the tennis team, the basketball team. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, what does it mean to do recreation in moderation? He says, going on walks sometimes. A devotee will go on walks sometimes to keep the body and soul fit. For a morning walk, like Prabhupada did. Right? So we cannot misuse these statements and say, well, recreation, yes, so now let me just play tennis all the time. No. Overly detached really means extreme, like eating 1 carrot every day. Prabhupada says, on account of his association with Mahatmas or great souls, 100% in the devotional service of the Lord, one may attain a little bit of attraction to Sri Krishna, but at the same time may remain very much attached to fruitive activities and material sense enjoyment. Such a person, if he has unflinching attraction to Krishna, becomes an eligible candidate for discharging devotional service. So Prabhupada is saying, even if we stay attached to material sense gratification, even if we're still attached to our toys, if we have an attraction to serving Krishna, we can engage in devotional service. We can become a very nice devotee. And this is the special quality of bhakti. Because in other processes, vairagya or renunciation is the prerequisite for any spiritual advancement. If you want to join Shankara's, Advaita school, the first requirement is sannyas. You must become a vairagi. Only sannyasis were allowed in his mutts. But bhakti is so nice that one can be attached one's material things. And that's still not a disqualification, and one can be attached, but if one has attraction for Krishna, one will still become a great devotee of the Lord. Why? Because akama sarvakama va mokshakam udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta paramapama. That the process of bhakti, an intense practice of bhakti, is so wonderful that even if we have desires, it will purify those desires. It will purify them. And we may say, oh, okay, this is very good to know. But this is us, all of us. We're attached. I have a family, I have a car, I have a home. I'm very attached to these things. Yet the mercy of the devotional process is so wonderful that because there's some attraction to do devotional service, though I'm attached, I can still do devotional service. And this is why, what does Krishna say in the Gita? He says that the wise soul, the devotee, does not disturb the minds of the materialist. He doesn't go and tell them you have to give this up and give that up. Rather, the devotee just engages them in the devotional service of Krishna. Krishna says that's the way the devotee, this was on your exam, that this is how the devotee engages others, by just engaging them in service and letting the process purify them. So Rupa Goswami, where is he getting this from? Is from the Gita. He's saying that you see the commonality, or wherever he's getting it from, that he's saying that we have to just make people attracted to Krishna. And if one has that attraction, Krishna is saying this is why an intelligent person does this. Why? Because by engaging them in service, they get that attraction. And then everything else follows naturally. So now Rupa Goswami speaks about the 3 levels of faith and the 3 levels of devotees in terms of their practice of devotional service. So there's the 3 levels. We know the Kanishta, the Madhyama, and the Uttama. The Kanishtadikari, their faith is weak in the Lord. The Madhyamadikari, their faith is strong, and the Uttamadikari, their faith is strong. So this is the primary difference between the Kanishta and the Madhyama and the Uttama. Now, between the Madhyama and Uttama, what is the main difference? That although the Madhyama is personally convinced about Krishna, they are engaged in Krishna's devotional service, they oftentimes cannot convince others. They cannot attract others to Krishna. They can't always defeat the opposing opinion, or another variation of this is that they cannot attract others to Krishna. So they don't have that potency where, people, just by seeing them, like you see the advanced devotees are like this, they become attracted to Krishna. I remember my Guru Maharaj, when he would visit, he would tell someone, you should start chanting 16 rounds every day. And we would see practically the next day, people would start chanting 16 rounds. That person would start chanting 16 rounds. And the same person, maybe I was preaching to for years and trying to convince them to chant more, and they maybe went from 1 round to 2 rounds. So, I was convinced myself that chanting is good, but I could not make that person attracted to chanting. Whereas a more advanced devotee came in and they just said it once, but because their conviction was so deep, because their realization was so great, they're able to convince others. And the Kanishta has weak faith and also does not know the scriptures. So these are different levels of devotional service. Once again, sort of expanding on this now, Uttama, strong, convinced, and can convince others. Madhyama is strong and convinced. Kanishta, weak and easily swayed. In terms of their knowledge, the Uttama is strong, can defeat opposing opinion. Madhyama has good knowledge, but can't always defeat the opposing opinion. And Kanishta is weak, cannot offer arguments to opposing opinion. Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kahe Suhrida Nishchay Krishna Bhakti Kaila Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. Shraddha is confident, firm faith that by rendering transcendental loving service to Krishna, one automatically performs all subsidiary activities. Such faith is favorable for the discharge of devotional service. And this is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So after attraction, the thing that differentiates devotees or makes them more and more eligible to or successful in practicing devotional service is their degree of faith. It's all a matter of faith, right? When bad things happen to us, the devotees who are weak, they cave. But those who are strong, they're able to continue because of their firm faith. Such faith is favorable to the discharge of devotional service. So this is a very famous verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Faith means conviction that the goal of life is to please Krishna and to abandon all other desires. So, what is the eligibility to be a neophyte devotee, a Kanishta Adhikari? So, the neophyte devotee on the bottom of the ladder, as we had just shown the 3 levels, is the Kanishta Adhikari. And the eligibility is one whose faith is not very strong, who is just beginning, should be considered a neophyte devotee. And one cannot feign this faith. This faith comes through experience and practice. What is the vision of this Kanishta Adhikari? A Prakrita Bhakta or materialistic devotee does not purposefully study Shastra and try to understand the actual standard of pure devotional service. Consequently, he does not show proper respect to advanced devotees. He may, however, follow the regulated principles learned from his spiritual master or from his family who worships the deity. He is to be considered on the material platform, although he is trying to advance in devotional service. Such a person is a Bhakta Praya, neophyte devotee, or Bhakta Bhasa, for he is a little enlightened by Vaishnava philosophy. So, some of you may be feeling after such a long time that, this Bhakti Shastri course is such a drag, it's just so much work. Oh my gosh, it's like such a commitment. But this, what we will cover in the next few slides, may encourage you in your Shastric studies. Of course, forgiving the incapability of your teacher, that is, of course, there always, and that may be a drag. But in terms of Shastric study, this will inspire you greatly, because you'll see that the difference, the primary, very key difference between these different levels of devotees is their study of Shastra, is their intent, is their effort in studying the Shastra. Right? The neophyte devotee does not study the Shastra, and therefore they don't understand the actual standard of pure devotional service. Like if you go to the Dham, right, many times you find there's sadhus living there for years, and they, even though they're doing bhakti and they're going to the temples, yet there's something different about them as opposed to a follower in Srila Prabhupada's movement who's even not leading such a dedicated life. Why? Because one person is doing it according to Shastra. It makes that person maybe more successful than the person who is, even though performing bhakti, they have a temple, they're busy in the temple, but they're not doing it under the guidance of a pure devotee. Like sometimes I would wonder about you go to the mountains, you see the yogis sitting there, all these things. And according to the scriptures, they're not as fortunate as the devotee who is serving under Srila Prabhupada. Why? Because they have not understood. They're not doing it with meaning, and that meaning, that knowledge, makes one advance 100 times faster. And what does that knowledge lead to? It leads to the understanding about the value of devotees. So, key difference between the advanced and neophyte devotees is that the neophyte devotee appreciates the Lord. He serves the spiritual master. He serves the deity, but cannot respect other devotees. So even he serves a spiritual master, he will still be a neophyte devotee if he cannot show the proper respect or meaning care for other devotees. Such a person is a bhakta praya. So where does one get this maturity? Where does one get this understanding of how to deal with other devotees, accept other devotees, relate with them? One gets it by studying Shastra, by trying to understand what is the purpose of devotional service? What is the purpose of serving the deity? Well, it's to get the mercy of the devotees. So therefore, I should serve the devotees. For the intermediate devotee, the Madhyam Adhikari, the eligibility is he who does not know scriptural argument very well, but who has firm faith, is called an intermediate or second-class devotee. And then what is the vision? So this is the new part. An intermediate or second-class devotee called Madhyam Adhikari offers his love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is a sincere friend to all the devotees of the Lord, shows mercy to the ignorant people who are innocent, and disregards those who are envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the intermediate devotee has studied the Shastras and, is able to differentiate between four types of people. The first class, the second class devotee offers his love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is a sincere friend to the devotees, shows mercy to the innocent, ignorant people, and avoids the envious. Avoids the envious, ignores them. So this is very important, very key instruction for us, because most of us aspire to or are at the platform of the intermediate devotee. Like we are wanting to respect devotees, we are, able to differentiate between the Lord and the devotees and understand their relative importances. So how do we interact in this world, and how do we interact with the Lord and the devotees? This is the way we do it. This is also the instruction that Narad Muni gave to Dhruva Maharaj. When Dhruva Maharaj was very angry by the way his father was treating him, he basically gave the same instruction. If someone is lesser than you, show them compassion. If someone is better than you, serve them to gain their wisdom. And if someone is equal to you, make friendship with them. Show them love and make friendship with them. And Narad Muni says, if you follow this principle, you'll be happy in every situation. And what about those who are envious of you? Ignore them, because there's no solution to that envy. This is the instruction, actually. If someone is feeling very jealous or envious towards us, we notice that, then we just ignore them for some time and give them the time to come around. We don't fight with them. We don't, butt heads with them. We just ignore it. And finally, the topmost devotee, the Uttamadhikari, the eligibility is one who is expert in logic and in understanding the revealed scriptures, and who always has firm conviction and deep faith that is not blind, is to be considered a topmost devotee in devotional service. So, is expert in logic and in the revealed scriptures. So if we want to go to the Uttamadhikari platform, we need to study the scriptures. So this effort that you're putting in is not for any waste. Even during the summer when it's time to travel and now COVID is gone, everyone wants to get out, still you're studying the scriptures. Why? Because it's so important. And who has firm conviction and deep faith, faith that is not blind. It is realization, it is vijnana, it is realized faith by his practical experience and practice of Krishna consciousness, is to be considered a topmost devotee in devotional service. The most expansive vision. The most advanced devotee sees within everything the soul of all souls, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Consequently, he sees systematically everything in relation to the Supreme Lord and understands that everything that exists is eternally situated within the Lord. The qualification for seeing Krishna everywhere is Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Guna Swarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So, whom the devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. So, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena, the Uttamadhikari devotee has developed this vision of seeing the Lord everywhere, seeing the Lord in everyone's heart, and therefore the devotee is the highest devotee. When we see Krishna everywhere, when we see Krishna in all things, when we see Krishna in all situations, then we can become, or by seeing Krishna in all situations, we can become an Uttamadhikari devotee. Prabhupada says freedom from fear means understanding that there's nothing in this world other than Krishna. Then there's no fear because you know that whatever is coming to you is coming to you by Krishna. And because Krishna's Krishna, there's nothing to fear. So Prabhupada then in the chapter he describes. Furthermore, he says that look, there's 4 people who are after the Lord, like we discussed in Bhagavad Gita. He now brings in Bhagavad Gita, he says, Artho Jigyasur Artharthi Jnani. And these 4, those who are distressed, those who are inquisitive, those who are in need of money or wealth, and those with knowledge, they approach the Lord. And accordingly, they're on the different levels. So the Kanishadikari may be on the platform of Arto, that the Kanishadikari is in need of something, approaches to the Lord. And similarly, the Madhyama may be, inquisitive and also have other material desires. But the Uttamadikari is the Jnani. The Uttamadikari has knowledge of the Lord, and therefore that is, as Krishna says in the Gita, that is the best of the 4. So let's just quickly look at these 4 examples. Gajendra called out to the Lord when the crocodile was about to kill him. So he was in the distressed condition, and in that distressed condition he was remembering the Lord. That's how his bhakti began. That's how his eligibility began, was as a result of his distress, he called out to the Lord. Now, of course, because he was such a great devotee in his last life, after calling out to the Lord, he became a pure devotee very quickly. But initially, it was due to distress that he remembered the Lord and his bhakti restarted. Jigyasur, those who are inquisitive, are like the sages of Naimisharanya. What's the truth? And out of the desire to seek the truth, one gets the association of the great devotee, Shaunaka Rishi, and then they heard the Bhagavatam from them. Artharthi, wanting wealth, that is Dhruva Maharaj, he wanted the kingdom, and that attracted him to the Lord, and that started his devotional service. And finally, the Jnanis, the example is the 4 Kumaras, they were in knowledge about the Lord, and therefore they're approaching the Lord, and they attained the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada says, without being elevated to the position of a Jnani or wise man, one cannot stick to the principle of worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It can be concluded that a person who is free from the bodily conception of life is an eligible candidate for pure devotional service. So Prabhupada here is making a very important point. He's saying that unless we elevate ourselves to the position of a jnani, unless we study the scriptures, we cannot stick to the principle of worshiping the Supreme Lord. Our faith will crumble very easily if it's not grounded in knowledge. So as we will see in the Nectar devotion, on one hand, bhakti transcends knowledge. The very point we started with is the purity of devotional service, meaning that bhakti is not dependent on anything else. But at the same time, while bhakti is not, one will not be able to practice bhakti consistently and seriously without becoming a jnani, Prabhupada here is saying, and without becoming detached also. Anyone who has any desire or aspiration for satisfying his senses by becoming more and more important, either in the material sense or in the spiritual sense, cannot actually relish the really sweet taste of devotional service. Excuse me, sorry. A very powerful quote here from Srila Prabhupada. Anyone who has any desire, aspiration for satisfying his senses by becoming more and more important, either in the material sense or in the spiritual sense, cannot actually relish the really sweet taste of devotional service. So, we have this desire to become important in our temples, important amongst devotees, important amongst karmis. We have an important position, but we cannot taste the sweet taste of devotional service until we have that desire in our heart. But at the same time, even if we do have that desire and we engage in devotional service, and that desire propels us to engage in devotional service, we will still be fortunate. In other words, that if that desire propels us to engage in devotional service, it will actually help us, because the process of bhakti is so wonderful that when we engage in devotional service, we will lose that desire. The key thing is to engage in devotional service, because bhakti is the process of purification. If we give up the process itself, then we lose everything. Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore compared possessing these bhukti, material, and mukti, liberation desires, with being influenced by the black art of a witch. In both cases, one is in trouble. So one has to give up the desire of bhukti, enjoying this material world, and mukti, liberation. Some of the liberated persons who have achieved these 4 stages of liberation may also develop affection for Krishna and be promoted to the Goloka Vrindavan planet in the spiritual sky. In other words, those who are already promoted to the Vaikuntha planets and who possess the 4 kinds of liberation may also sometimes develop affection for Krishna and become promoted to Krishna Loka. So Prabhupada is saying how affection for Krishna and being promoted to Golok Vrindavan is above liberation. It's above the 4 types of liberation. What are the 4 types of liberation? Sarupya, having the same form as God. Salokya, having the same planet as God. Sarshti, that's the 5th one, I think. Salokya, Sarupya. Samipya.
Samipya.
Yes. And the 4th one is which one?
Ayuja.
Okay. Yes. And Sayuja. So in all these different 4 ways, we can gain liberation. The same opulences of the Lord, the same planet, the same form. But none of these things attract the devotee. Rather, the devotee on that level could develop attraction for Krishna. So this attraction is higher than liberation. Imagine what Srila Prabhupada is giving us. Out of many kinds of devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the one who is attracted to the original form of the Lord, Krishna in Vrindavan, is considered to be the foremost, first-class devotee. Such a devotee is never attracted by the opulences of Vaikuntha, or even of Dwarka, the royal city where Krishna ruled. The conclusion of Sri Rupa Goswami is that the devotees who are attracted by the pastimes of the Lord in Gokula or Vrindavan are the topmost devotees. So here in black and white, Prabhupada and Sri Rupa Goswami are saying that the highest devotees are the devotees who are attracted to Krishna in Golok Vrindavan in the form of Krishna. This is why Lord Chaitanya gave this. He gave what no other incarnation gave, right? Love for Krishna in the mood of the gopis. And he would even chide Murari Gupta, who was none other than Hanuman, and try to convert him to Krishna worship. But he's so deeply attached to Lord Ram as Hanuman that Lord Chaitanya allowed him to stay in that rasa, in that mood. But everyone else, he transformed them, or changed them to the worship of Krishna. And in ISKCON now you see, like, there's, sometimes now as we expand, there's like, more focus on Ramayan or focus on this or that, but we are the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Of course, we don't also want to make the mistake of thinking that the Lord's incarnations are different from him. Lord Ram, Krishna are the same person, and Lord Narsingha, and we have Nrsingadev deities, we have Lord Ram deities everywhere. At the same time, I'm not saying, Prabhupada here is saying, that the topmost devotees are those who are attached to the Golok Vrindavan pastimes. The Golok Vrindavan pastimes are those specifically in relation to Krishna. So, and Golok Vrindavan pastimes, by the way, is also Jagannath pastimes, because Rath Yatra takes place in Vrindavan also. There's a few books by Gaur Govinda Maharaj explaining these. So those of you going to Rath Yatra know that you are participating in a Golok Vrindavan pastime. Of course, again, on our level, these things don't matter so much. If we could just become attracted to Krishna a little bit, it'll be such a wonderful thing. So we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But still, Prabhupada here is telling us this, so we need to understand what he's telling us, and we have to be clear about our goal. We should never look down upon devotees of Vishnu or Rama actually, with all these different incarnations, there's different, important understandings that how, in a certain aspect, they can be also included, or you could say, related with Krishna Lila. So like the worship of Lord Nrsingadev is considered so special because there's verses in the scriptures that say that by worshiping Lord Nrsingadev, one gets love for Krishna in the mood of the gopis. So we cannot, on our level, discriminate. We just have to follow Prabhupada's process. But our focus should be on Krishna book. Our focus should be on Krishna's pastimes. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered that Prithivite, all over the world, as many towns and villages are there, my name will be established there. So we are trying to do that. So his name should be established. Does not mean that they should remain as Yavanas or Malachas and simply they should know Lord Chaitanya. No, actually the fact is that everyone should be elevated to the position of Vaishnava, purified Vaishnava. So the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement is to take us to this topmost platform, Prabhupada is saying. Not that, although it's meant for everyone, we just stay on the neophyte platform. We should become a purified Vaishnava, a pure Vaishnava. So now just a quick recap here. to bring this all together, we talked about this Samanya Bhakti, which was the introduction, the Mangalacharan, the different parts of the introduction. Then we looked at the definition of Uttama Bhakti. How do you define what devotional service is? Anya Bilashata Shunyam, Jnana Karma Dinavritam. We looked at the 6 characteristics of Uttama Bhakti. So the 6 qualities of devotional service. Then we touched upon and now expanded upon the qualification for understanding bhakti, definition of sadhana bhakti, definition of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. So last time I gave you the definitions of sadhana bhakti and Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. So sadhana bhakti in general, and then remember sadhana has 2 parts, Vaidhi and Raganuga. So the definition of Vaidhi bhakti. Then we've been looking at the qualification for Vaidhi bhakti. What is a qualification? We said attraction to Krishna, and then we looked at the specific qualifications for the Uttamadhikari, the Madhyamadhikari, and the Kanishthadhikari, and how mixed devotees can get purified. So we said that even if we have mature desires, if we're attracted to Krishna and we engage in devotional service, we will get purified. Rejection of desire for bhukti and mukti. So we must give up these desires, and that is the purity of devotional service. The pure devotee of the Lord does not need or desire any material happiness or the liberation, and that the highest qualification a person can have is to be a devotee of Govinda or Krishna. And finally, this last point, which I'm going to just touch upon, this is chapter 5. It's very sort of self-evident, so you can read it yourself, is that Varna and Ashrama, Rupa Goswami specifically makes a point. It's such an important point to him that he spends a separate chapter making this point, which is somewhat obvious to us. But he wants us to be crystal clear on this, that our Varna and Ashrama do not serve as qualifications for bhakti. So in these days in ISKCON, there's a big, you could say, trend towards varnashram, which is very nice. It's very good to apply the principles of varnashram. Yet at the same time, Rupa Goswami here is making the point that varnashrama is not a qualification or a requirement in any way for the practice of bhakti. The devotee and also the practice of bhakti are beyond any varnas and any ashramas. One can practice bhakti within these ashrams, one can do that, but being a brahmana is not a qualification or necessity to practice bhakti. In fact, later on, as we will see, Rupa Goswami makes this point so clearly because he says that the greatest offense to a devotee is to judge them based upon their varna and ashrama. So the greatest offense one can do to a devotee, we say, is to criticize a devotee, right? But even amongst criticism, Rupa Goswami says that the biggest criticism is to criticize a devotee for being of low birth, of being of a lower caste like a Shudra, for being a Westerner, or for being an Indian, or for being an African. That is the greatest offense. So Varna and Ashrama have no bearing on bhakti. So the concluding quote is, the missing point is Krishna. And the Nectar devotion teaches us how to stimulate our original love for Krishna and how to be situated in that position where we can enjoy our blissful life. That loving propensity remains imperfectly fulfilled until we know who is the Supreme Beloved. Our love can be fully satisfied only when it is reposed in Krishna. So this Nectar devotion is actually teaching us how to practice devotional service, that is how to love, how to stimulate our love for Krishna, and how to be situated in that position where we can love Krishna and enjoy blissful life. So I will stop here now, and if anyone has any questions, we can discuss the questions. Today, I promised everyone I would do a short class because many devotees are going for Rath Yatra.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for such a wonderful, enlightening class. We are very, very grateful to you. Prabhu, I have two questions. How would you describe liberation? Like in general, what would you say like liberation? Because at the same time, like you mentioned a couple of times that we should have desire to go to Goloka,
Yes.
right? So is that not a liberation? That is also mukti only, right? Because we want to be free from birth, death, old age, disease, like Srila Prabhupada always mentions.
Yes.
So that is also a desire for liberation.
Yes, yes. So it depends on the context, because the word liberation is an English word, you see. So how we use the English words oftentimes don't correspond to the Sanskrit words. So if liberation is referring to the 4 or 5 types of liberation like we discussed, of course, impersonal liberation, the devotee doesn't want to begin with. So Rupa Goswami, I mean, it's so, it's like almost an offense to the Lord to want to merge into him. So it's so clear, he doesn't even care to mention it. But even the other 4 types of liberation, as you mentioned, having the same planet, the same form, the same opulence, the same things as the Lord, those liberations the devotee also rejects, because those are liberations that are not motivated simply by the spontaneous, pure love to serve Krishna. There's some, opulence that comes along with it. There's some distance from the Lord in those relationships. So those liberations the devotee rejects, and the liberation of engaging in the service of the Lord is also a liberation, because it's freeing us from material life. It's liberation because it's true liberation, because it's bringing us to Krishna. That liberation the devotee accepts. So what I was mentioning before was what Prabhupada said on our level. Prabhupada said that we are so fallen that we cannot right now say that I don't want liberation. Krishna, I just want to, serve you life after life and suffer in this material world if needed. Because Prabhupada said if we feel that way, we'll become attached to the material world. On our level, we need to pray to Krishna, please take me back home, back to God. Please take me to Golok Vrindavan. So once we are a very advanced pure devotee, then yes, we won't even care to go to Golok Vrindavan. Our desire will be only to please Krishna. Like the gopis, they say we'll go to hell for millions of lifetimes and leave Golok Vrindavan if that's what pleases Krishna. So the only liberation that we do care about is the liberation of pleasing Krishna, or the liberation of bhakti. So that word liberation is very diverse, and it can be used in different ways.
So Prabhu, here liberation, we are especially talking about the other 4, like we discussed, right? We should not have that desire to go to Krishna's planet and have same form and everything, right? Like live in the opulence. We should not think that way, right, Prabhu?
We should not. We should not.
Prabhu, you're muted.
Aspire for those things. The Bhagavatam says we should reject those things. Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. And I have one more question, Prabhu, related with this, the Kleshagni, Shubhada, and everything. That when we go out for Harinam Sankirtan and book distribution, when we tell someone about Mahamantra for the first time, and so how should we convince them to chant? Keeping the offenses in mind, and what should be the motivating factor for them to chant? Like, why should someone chant?
Yes. So one of the offenses against the holy name, right, is like you're saying, is to explain the glories of the holy name to a faithless person. So Prabhupada says that we don't go into detail with them. We don't tell them that this holy name is so powerful, it's non-different than Krishna, all these things. But rather, we just try to get them to chant. And how do we get them to chant? We say that, this mantra is the sound vibe is a spiritual sound vibration, and it awakens our love for God. So we give them a basic explanation, but we don't fully give them the understanding of the full extent of the glories of the holy name. Why? Because they will simply reject those and laugh at it, and then further insult the holy name. Because Nam is a Prabhu. We say Nam Prabhu. Nama is Krishna. So we don't want to bring them in a situation where they get more opportunity for insulting the Lord. Same idea with like the Rasa Leela, right? Why don't we discuss Rasa Leela pastimes? Because it gives them the opportunity to misconstrue and insult those transcendental pastimes. So through logic, through philosophy, we convince them to chant. We tell them Christ said, "Hallowed be thy name." So taking the name of God is spiritual, it's divine, you know, Allahu Akbar, and we are also saying, chant the name of God. This is the process to reach the Lord. So through our philosophy and intelligence, we try to convince them to chant, and also through the taste. When they hear us chanting and they enjoy the music and they see the devotees and they eat the prasad, they get inspired to chant. But not the full details, like what we're discussing, the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. We may not need to discuss that with them. Just the basic philosophy is sufficient.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you so much. Because I remember one time I was doing it and somebody said, "So is this holy name going to bring me money?" I was American person. And I was like, I don't know what to reply. I just,
Yes, and you can say yes, it will. And the reason I say this, I have a bona fide example of this. His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj told someone that I know, and he told them that if you chant 2 rounds every day, you'll become a crorepati. He told them that if you chant, you'll become a multimillionaire. And that person still didn't chant. But one day they will chant. When they get that benediction, I mean, who doesn't want to be a multimillionaire? But he actually told them that. He said, just to somehow to get him to chant. So we can, Prabhupada said, we can use tricks to engage people in Krishna's service. 100% bona fide.
okay, I understood. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for clarifying and helping me understand. I'm very grateful to you. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Vivek Prabhu, you're next.
Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much for your discussion and class today, Prabhuji. The question I have is, sorry if my voice is breaking. The question I have is, you explained about the 3 different types of
You cut out, Prabhu.
devotees. Don't really even get to the point of analyzing where we are in those 3 categories, because generally when we hear to say when we hear to classes of Uttamadhikaris or pure devotees, their motive or their instruction to all the practicing sadhakas is to be a humble servant in whatever service opportunity that's been given. So having said that, how do these 3 categories apply to practicing devotees? Because we are never at a point where we are analyzing ourselves as to where we are in those 3 categories. Not probably the 3rd category, at least the first 2 categories. So, if can you please throw some light on that, Prabhuji? Thank you.
So, Prabhu, your voice cut out in the middle, so I'm not sure if I got the full question. I'll answer it, and then you can tell me if I answered your question or not. Prabhu, I think that's where the important part, which is repeated again and again, of studying the Shastras is very important. And Srila Prabhupada actually mentioned this on a few different occasions, that he said that the devotees who read his books very seriously were very advanced, were the more advanced devotees. Similarly, I had one experience where one devotee had joined the temple and he was just continuously reading. And my Guru Maharaj said that he's a very special devotee because he saw him continuously reading. So we can understand, I think this is your question, which level we're at or how to move forward on these levels when we, in addition to our services, we are reading the scriptures. Because that shows that we are intensely and intently trying to make spiritual advancement because we're trying to learn. services we have to do, right? But this is something we really don't have to, but we're still doing it. We're taking the initiative. And Prabhupada did say that the reason, he said, reading Srimad Bhagavatam is pure devotional service. The reason why we have so many services, he said, is because we know that you cannot read 24 hours a day. So bhakti means, like we discussed last time, pure bhakti means constant. So devotional service needs to be done constantly. That is 24 hours a day. And because we cannot read Bhagavatam 24 hours a day, we're engaged in other devotional services. Also, we're engaged in other devotional services because of the preaching mission, because we want to share this knowledge with others, and that may be a higher principle. But the Prabhupada is showing the emphasis or emphasizing the importance of it by saying it like this, that if you could read Bhagavatam 24 hours a day, then that's all you should do. That's all you need to do. But the fact is we cannot. We will be lying to ourselves if we think that we can. And the fact is that we need to perform devotional service constantly. So therefore, we need to do everything. We need to do our practical devotional service. We need to do our chanting, and we need to do our reading. And then it will become gradually very clear how we should move through these different stages of bhakti. Does this answer your question, Prabhu, or did I miss it?
Yes, Prabhuji, partially yes. The other portion of my question was services. Yes, Prabhuji, not really physical service, but like you said, any form of devotional service itself, when we are performing, sometimes we think that we are not actually doing it to be at a certain level. We are actually performing that service to please someone. Say, for example, chanting or hearing or reading. But at that point, there is, so what is your recommendation, Prabhuji? Do we need to, my question is essentially, do we need to reassess ourselves with these, at least the first two categories once in a while, is where I'm trying to understand. Because at no point, at least I have not really put myself in a place where I've tried to analyze whether I am a Kanishta or a Madhyama, because that's not really, I don't know whether it is correct or not.
Right. So the motivation to do devotional service to please a devotee is a natural motivation. I would say that most of us do this like this. Like I may do some service to please my temple president or to please my spiritual master, please the devotees. And that is a sign of a Madhyamadikari, because we're doing it to please a devotee means that we value the devotees. The Kanishtadikari is doing it simply in this understanding that it's me and God. I want to please God, so I have to do my artik every morning. But respecting the devotees is not so important. So that is there. So we continuously have to assess that, okay, I need to do both. I need to serve the deity, but am I just serving the deity, not understanding the value of the devotees, or am I, or am I doing, or is my faith not strong? Is it very weak? So maybe I should read more. It's a continual assessment, Prabhu, and we should try to please the devotees. That's the main thing that will make us go from Madhyam to Uttamadikari, and then finally please every living entity, see Krishna in every person's heart. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Nice question, Prabhu. Thank you. Sham Rupini Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful class. Prabhuji, regarding the 4 kinds of people that you're talking about, but even in Bhagavad Gita, we saw that, right? Jignasur, they are supposed to be better than Jnanis, isn't it? Like Jnanis are those who are highly scholar, and I don't know, maybe I'm confused or I'm missing something.
Yes, I also got confused with this at a certain point. The Jigyasu is the inquisitive one. So they are often the armchair philosophers. Like, they sit in the university and they're always asking questions about God. Can God, build a rock that he cannot lift? Can God, do this? Who is God? All these things, which is good. Inquisitiveness is good. But the Jnani is someone who is, in this context, the word Jnani is being used not as an impersonalist, But a jnani is someone who is established in knowledge. They are worshiping Krishna because they know this is the right thing to do. So they're not the armchair scholars. The armchair scholars are generally the jigyasu. They're inquisitive, but they're not established in knowledge. They haven't accepted the knowledge. They're not fixed in that knowledge. And so in the Gita, Krishna says that of the four, this fourth one, the jnani is the dearest to me because they are worshiping me because they know it's the best thing to do. They're doing it in knowledge. They're not worshiping me because they need to, pay the next utility bill. They're not worshiping me because they got hurt. They're worshiping me because they're happy or they're sad. They know that this is the right thing to do.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Nice question. Nice clarification. Indu Lekha Karuna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the wonderful session, Prabhu. I have a question on the free will. You talked about free will, and you also mentioned that we are free, that even after hundreds and thousands of endeavors, we still may not be fortunate enough to get into the path of bhakti. Something like that was what you were describing in that slide. And I just got so confused, because how is that related to our free will? If everything is as per our free will, then whatever we desire, we should get, isn't it?
Yes, very nice question. So that specific passage I had quoted from a place that was saying that even after thousands of efforts, we may not get the mercy of the devotee, the free will, the mercy, the free mercy of the devotee. So you may say, well, how is this possible if it's free will? Because we have our free will. So like that is up to us. Like you're saying, whatever whichever direction we want to go to, we can go to because we have our free will. But then the devotee also has his free will or her free will. And if we are requesting the devotee, so if we want the shelter of a pure devotee, and we try 1,000 times, it's possible that even after 1,000 times, we may not get that mercy of the devotee, that free mercy, that mercy. And someone else, even without trying once, may get that mercy. Does it happen generally like that? No, it doesn't. Because the devotees are so merciful, when we approach them, even a few times, they immediately become merciful. But it's said to show the independence and causelessness of a devotee's decision. Someone is completely unworthy, Jagai Madhai, but Lord Nityananda gives his complete mercy to them. Someone else is a very pure Brahmana, is trying to get the shelter of a devotee, but the devotee is not giving that causeless mercy. Why? Because it's up to the devotee. They have their free will. They may decide that, no, I don't want to. One example of this, of making sense of why something like this might happen, is when one time there was a very big conflict in Hawaii between devotees, and they were all Prabhupada's disciples, because at that time everyone was a Prabhupada disciple. So there's two groups of devotees, and they were really arguing and really, angry with one another. And then that's one group of devotee was thinking about leaving the movement, to leave ISKCON and just go away, just over this argument. And then Srila Prabhupada told them, he said that if you go away and you reject my mercy, just because of some small thing, you reject my mercy, then he said, then for something like, he said, 600 lifetimes, you won't get my mercy again. This is an exact quote. And other senior devotees can tell what the exact number was, either 600 or 800, something like that. Prabhupada said, for 600 lifetimes, you won't get my mercy again. Similarly, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says that this opportunity of receiving Lord Chaitanya's mercy is so great. It's such a benediction. I mean, we just have to chant and we get love for Krishna in the mood of the gopis. That the Chaitanya Charitamrita says that if someone wastes this opportunity, and who just spends the time and becoming a materialist and does not take this up, then the next opportunity that they will get will be after one kalpa, which is 1,000 divya yugas. The next time Lord Chaitanya comes, then they will get the next opportunity. Until then, they won't get Lord Chaitanya's mercy again. This is a direct quote from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that mercy will be, if one does not recognize it, insults it, and disregards this mercy, then one will not get that again. So these are two examples where those devotees, they may attempt in future lifetimes to get it, but they may not get it if the devotee decides, no, they have to wait 600 lifetimes now. Of course, like I said, devotees are very merciful. Generally, the problem is our free will, not their free will. But the point is that the devotee also has free will. Their mercy is not something we can demand. The mercy is not something that we can expect. It's something we can hope for, and we have to beg for it. And hopefully we'll get it. Like another wonderful example is a story of, I think, Chota Haridas, is it, in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes? Junior Haridas or Chota Haridas, and he of course is a brahmachari, and he becomes a little lusty towards a woman. Lord Chaitanya rejects him from his association. On his behalf, all the devotees beg Lord Chaitanya, please accept him again. He made a small mistake, please accept him. Lord Chaitanya said, you go and you tell him that for 1,000,000 lifetimes he will not get my mercy again. And so the devotees go back and they tell Chodhari that, I mean, this is the order of Lord Chaitanya. We're telling you that Lord Chaitanya said, in this life you won't see him again, and for 1,000,000 lifetimes you won't get his mercy. And when Chota Haridas hears this, he begins to dance in ecstasy and say that after 1,000,000 lifetimes, Lord Chaitanya said, I'll get his mercy. He gave, through this message, he gave the greatest benediction. 1,000,000 lifetimes, I'll get his mercy. And the devotees go back and they relate this to Lord Chaitanya, and then Lord Chaitanya says, okay, bring him back. He is so happy by his determination. So that's the point, that the Lord and the devotee have their free will, and we have our free will.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes. We hope they are more merciful and don't use that free will on us. But yes, but thank you. That is a wonderful explanation. I got completely confused there. But
thank you for that question. It's a very nice question.
So can I just ask, like, how can we? So you said that it is our free will and it is also the mercy of the Lord. Then how can we actually try to bring other people into Krishna consciousness? Because there are so many factors that we cannot that are not dependent on us, like even our family members. How do we get our children to also become Krishna conscious? Because I mean, they understand this, but ultimately that attraction for Krishna should come out from themselves, right? So do we just wait for it? And I mean, I'm always surprised by how wonderful devotees you both turned out to be, and your parents are devoted. But yeah, so that's why I was just wondering.
So this is exactly what you're mentioning, is exactly what Rupa Goswami is telling us. That, well, then we have to think, what is the eligibility to perform devotional service? It is attraction, right? Attraction for Krishna. So now, switching the roles, so we need the mercy of the devotee, but now you're wondering, okay, how do I, as a devotee, aspiring devotee, we don't think we're doing, but aspiring devotee, how do I bring others? Well, the devotees are thinking, what are ways in which I can attract this person to Krishna? How can I make them attracted to Krishna? Well, by making Krishna more attractive to them. Just like in the same way that, a young boy or a young girl tries to influence the free will of someone that they are attracted to be attracted to them. What do? They dress up really beautiful. Maybe the girl will put lipstick on, the boy will put a nice jacket on. And it's not forced. They're not trying to force each other to love each other, but they want out of their free will that they come. And how are they inspiring that free will? By making themselves more attractive. So in terms of Krishna, why we decorate the deity so beautifully? Why did Prabhupada, he established the highest standard of deity worship in the world, to make Krishna look so beautiful that if someone comes to the temple, they'll feel attracted by him. Because he knew that attraction is the eligibility for devotional service. All the temples you go in India, they give you a little, this rock candy and maybe some, banana, and they'll put that in your hand. Why in Prabhupada's movement, he did this Sunday feast with the most delicious prasad, so that people could get attracted to Krishna. So the mercy of the devotees, that is all of us aspiring devotees, is coming through this attractive process. So we don't have the power to give that mercy. But Prabhupada's mercy and the devotees' mercies and the Acharya's mercy is coming through this process of devotional service, which is so attractive. And we try to make it attractive so their mercy can flow through and reach all these conditioned souls. Same thing with the books, right? People, if they become attracted to the book, their bhakti starts. So our role is just to try to make people attracted to Krishna, attracted to the devotees, attracted to the books, all these things, so that then the mercy can flow.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Any final question? Okay, wonderful. So we ended in very good time. For those of you going to Rath Yatra, have a wonderful Rath Yatra. For those of you who are not going to Rath Yatra, enjoy your day, and we will meet again next week. I will post the homework sometime during the week. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
We will.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.